Welcome back to Sports Talk with Dad. My name is Kyle, and as always, I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man who was alive when baseball was invented as a sport. My dad, Tim.
I was not alive then, but baseball is the most perfect game ever invented. And in honor of that, we have bobbleheads dating back from the glory days of bobbleheads in the early 1960s.
You're just proving my point that you're old.
Not old. I just love really cool collectibles.
I do like the new gear. I'm not going to lie. It is pretty sweet. You do have one of the most offensive mascots ever up there. You may have to change that out at some point.
Look, he had to go. I will grant you that he had to go.
Of all the mascots that have been gotten rid of, that was one that needed to go.
However, of the names that they could have went with, they picked the absolute worst. I don't care if it's on their bridge or whatever. The Spiders would have been a historic name.
Well, they were the Spiders.
Exactly. There was a historic tie to it. It would have been a badass logo that they could have come up with. The Guardians, like the Commanders or Commandos or whatever Washington is now, is just awful. And I think they picked a bad name.
Yeah, the Guardians is a dumb name. I don't know who came up with that, but it's definitely not a good name.
No.
I really thought Spiders were going to be there. You couldn't do Nats, which was their name before the Indians, right? Because you have the Nationals. So you couldn't go back to that, but I really thought Spiders was solid. There's really no other Spiders around. Just there's a college team. I think it's the Richmond? Yeah, Richmond Spiders.
I have no idea.
They're the only other Spiders in the game. I mean, it just would have been unique. You could have done some awesome things with the logo. You could have put a spider web in a baseball glove with the spider on it. You could have had it hanging from the bat. I mean, there's a number of different logos you could have done.
And instead, they went with something that is just awful.
Bad. The logo's so bad. The baseball with the G.
Don't like it. I don't like it at all. and because, especially because of you, I did not put the Cardinals one I have up there.
No, you need to quit buying Cardinal stuff, all right? It does not belong in this house. That we are a Cubs household here.
We are.
And the Cardinal stuff needs to go.
Except that their bobblehead back in the day was really cool.
I don't care.
That's why they aren't here.
My son's asking questions. He will not be a Cardinals fan. My son can cheer for any other team. I don't care if he's a Bears fan. It doesn't bother me. There is one team that he cannot cheer for in all of sports, and that is the St. Louis Cardinals.
And I support that. I don't like them either, but I got to give them credit for, number one, having a really kind of a cool jersey.
It's awesome.
A cool logo on the hat.
Definitely.
And a cool bobblehead.
Listen, St. Louis is one of the greatest organizations in baseball history. They're a small market team that always finds a win.
Great baseball town.
Amazing uniforms. Their stadium is gorgeous. Their STL logo is unbelievable. And I hate them.
That's because in all rivalries, and we've got to do a show on rivalries at some point.
A lot of good ones out there.
The Cubs and Cardinals can't be considered a great rivalry because for most of the time that they played each other, the Cardinals have been the hammer and the Cubs have been the nail.
Blah, blah, blah.
Just stating a fact.
Listen, I get it. I cheer for a big market team that has all the money in the world and can't win, and St. Louis is over here destroying us year after year. I get it.
We stole their
St. Louis.
We did steal their announcer.
Yeah. Harry Carey did come to Chicago for different circumstances,
which we're not going to get into.
But I mean, it's literally a hatred of a team because they continue to win, and they are smart with baseball, and the Cubs have won World Series in 108 years.
Very true, but the fact remains I mean, we even have Jobu here because we love baseball so much.
We do have Jobu, and I totally used Jobu in the 10th inning of the 2016 World Series to jinx the Cleveland Indians.
There was a Cubs hat on Jobu.
There was a Cubs hat, and I pulled rum for him in the right before during that rain delay. Poured rum for him for the Cubs, and it worked.
At some point, we've got to show the video of you and I celebrating at 2 a.m., which we're going to talk about on this episode. 2 a.m. when the Cubs finally won.
Trying not to scream because
the kids were sleeping.
My 3-year-old son is asleep. He couldn't stay up. But yeah, we do have to show that video.
So
obviously the topic of today's baseball.
We love baseball.
The lockout's happening right now. Pitchers and catchers are supposed to report already, and they haven't, which I mean is ridiculous. I mean, this one is on the owners. I'm 100% on the player side on this. I don't think they're asking for that much. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it makes no sense the way that contracts are set up with arbitration, how long players have to wait with the way baseball is when it comes to minor leagues.
True, and I think the owners have grabbed back some of that free agency money that they were giving up for a very long time.
Right.
That being said, baseball has to address other things to become relevant again. And we've talked about this now for 3-4 years.
Yeah.
About ways that we can do it. Some of these are new ideas. I think the one thing, and I hate it, but I've got to just accept the fact that the National League is going to become a softball league like the American League is, and the DH is going to be in the National League.
It's not a softball league. It's a different game.
It's softball.
All right, so we're going to get into this. If you are new to following our channel, which I know many of you are, and thank you so much for following us, we are going to redo our first episode, which is talking about how we can save baseball. You guys have heard a ton if you follow the lockout about money, about different things. We're not going to get into that. We're actually going to get into the rule changes that need to happen in baseball to make it a better, more watchable game, and to make sure generations like my kids are into baseball and are going to be willing to continue to watch this sport. Because right now it's getting to the point where you're losing generations of baseball fans.
Baseball has lost at least 2 and maybe 3 generations of kids.
Right.
Because of the way that they put their playoffs on and World Series games on.
Yeah.
They start the games at 9 o'clock Eastern. That's just too late, and kids can't stay up. And look at the Super Bowl. It started at 5:30.
Right.
Everybody was watching. There is no reason on God's green earth that baseball can't start the games at a reasonable time so that kids can sit with their parents and watch the games and become in love with the game the way that you and I are.
I agree. Before we get into that, we're going to get into 5 rule changes that need to happen in baseball and need to be put in place. But before we do that, I need you to do one thing for me. I need you to follow these instructions right here and like and subscribe and hit that little bell notification so you get notified every time we drop an episode. And you can enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making this show. And thank you so much for listening in. But I'm thinking it's time for us to get into these rule changes.
Well, in this episode, we need to share because Manfred, Greeny, everybody involved in baseball and is passionate about it needs to see this. These rule changes.
We need to fix this. We sent this to Bug Seelig back in the day.
We did. And these rule changes are legit. They're not way out there. These are things that can happen and should happen. And one of them is going to be very controversial. And I admit, I'm a baseball purist, but I'm even saying this one change has to happen.
Changes need to happen. I'm excited about these. This is going to save
Let's
baseball.
talk about it.
Let's get into it. These are the new rules that need to happen in baseball to make it a better sport. First and foremost, DH across both leagues. It's time to rip off that Band-Aid. You and I, both National League fans.
We're baseball fans.
One of my favorite memories is Travis Wood pitching, going out in the field, hitting a home run, making a great catch, and then coming back and pitching, right?
Right.
I mean, that's baseball. But unfortunately, that side of baseball at this point is done, and you're going to lose that chess piece. It's time for, with free agency and with interleague play going the way that it is time to bring the DH across both leagues.
DH has been around since the early 70s when the American League adopted it because they were struggling.
Right.
It's always been National League was real baseball, American League was softball. However,
it's not softball.
It is softball.
It's still baseball.
No, it's not. However, one of the changes we're going to suggest will bring some of the strategy that you lose when you just have the softball designated hitter involved. We're going to bring it into baseball so that it at least resembles baseball the way we know it now. Strategy.
It is, and you're going to lose that strategy piece, but it is what it is, right? I mean, we're going to talk about another thing because the other rule change we're putting into place is instead of having 3 divisions with 5 teams, we're going to change to 5 divisions with 3 teams each. You give everybody a 1/3 chance of winning. You give everybody a 1/3 chance of going to the playoffs, and it just makes better baseball. You don't change the playoff format. And with this, you don't have to.
Right.
Well, the playoff format's great. I love the 1-game play-in. I love how they have a 5-game series, and then the championships are 7-game series. I love the format, especially the 1-game play-in. It's exciting. But baseball used to be about division winners.
You had to win to get into the playoffs.
And this wild card stuff, I'm sorry, it works in football. It works. Basketball has their own thing that they do, but it just doesn't work in baseball. I think it's a bad copy that they try to do from football to get people more interested. You have to win your division to get in.
And for those people that say a 3-team division isn't enough, completely disagree, because you look at football, you've got 4 teams in every division.
Correct.
And every year there's at least 1 or 2 teams that make a couple changes and get into the playoffs.
Correct.
By doing this, when that trade deadline comes along, it's going to be for a much more interesting conversation, because if there's only 3 teams in your league or in your division,
right,
are you really going to be a seller when you could possibly get into the playoffs?
Right. You may not have it this year. I mean, now instead of trading your top pitcher, all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't want to trade for my top pitcher. And now we're looking into free agency more. Now that draft gets a little bit more interesting because you're never that far away.
Correct.
You always have a chance. It brings parity back to baseball. You're not seeing the Yankees and the Red Sox every single year. You're not seeing the same teams over and over and over again. It changes things up. And again, in a sports world that likes parity as much as it does, you're bringing that into baseball now.
And I think it's just going to make all of a sudden baseball, one of the things that's really happened and hurt baseball over the last 2 decades, it's become a regional game. When Bud Selig was commissioner, he made changes that encouraged that it was a regional game.
Right.
This is actually going to make it a national game.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you're going to be paying attention to what everybody else is doing, and we're going to get into this division breakdown and really show what this could look like. But again, you're going to all of a sudden be paying attention to what people are doing on the West Coast, because those are people you could be playing. It's a lot closer. It's such a long season. Only having 3 teams in a division, all of a sudden you're paying attention a lot closer. Because
at the end of the season, you're going to be playing your division.
Right.
To try to decide who's going to go to the playoffs.
Correct.
And we'll talk about it. The other rule changes?
This is my all-time favorite rule change that I came up with, and this is one that would save baseball more than the rest of them. This is probably my favorite rule out of all of them, because the issue we have in baseball is that it really happened in the 80s. In 1981, the average length of a game was 2.5 hours. In 87, do you know how much that jumped up?
I don't know the number.
A half an hour.
It's ridiculous.
It went from a 2.5-hour game to a 3-hour game in a matter of 6 seasons. And now we have World Series games. We can't finish in 4 hours.
Which is it's got to change. We've got to address it.
We do, and a big reason is because of the pitching changes throughout. So this third rule is only 1 pitching change during an inning per game. There's your chess piece back. This isn't saying you can't change pitchers out in the middle of right before an inning starts,
Sure.
right? If you're going into the third inning, it's the bottom of the third, you want to bring another pitcher, go for it. It's before the inning starts. However, if you're in the middle of the third and there's 2 outs and your pitcher's struggling, you have a decision to make because you get 1 change per game where you can change during an inning. So if you make that change with 2 outs left in the third, you can't make that change in the ninth.
And the reason this is important is because, and I hate to say it, Brewer fans, but Craig Counsell, with all these pitching changes, you've turned it into almost a game where your pitchers are going to go for 1 inning and that's it. And that has got to end. I miss the days when pitchers would actually go 7, 8 innings. They planned on pitching a complete game.
Right.
The relievers that came in would be pitching for 3 innings. It wasn't this 1 inning closer at the end of the game. As good as Mariano Rivera was, give me the days of Raleigh Fingers and Goose Gossage where they had to come in and face the rotation a couple times to get that save. And I want to see that pitching become more of the game again. And I think this rule change will actually do that. It's going to force them to think.
And my thought is if you want to have more that, or if you want to have a pitcher pitch every single inning, I mean, go for it. It doesn't matter. With this, you can have that. I mean, you can make as many changes as you want as long as it's before an inning starts. That's when that pitching change has to happen. What this is going to stop is it's going to stop people from all of a sudden it's the second inning, we're going to change a pitcher with 1 out. And then we're going to change a pitcher now that there's 2 outs. It's the 9th inning. And I'm going to have 3 different pitchers for 3 different batters. You can't do that anymore. They changed where you have to face 3 batters now. But it stops that. Now you have to be strategic. Now all of a sudden you have a starter in the game and there's only 3 teams in your division. So it's anybody's game at any point. And you have a starter that's blowing up, right? And he's given up 5 runs in the first inning and there's only 1 out. Now as a manager, you have to make that decision. Do I let my pitcher stay in here to figure this out to get us out of this inning? Or do I burn my only change in the middle of an inning that I have right now and bring somebody else in? Because now I don't have that in the 9th.
And at some point, you may make that decision to do that. But I'm really tired of the guys on the mound being throwers and not pitchers. I missed the Greg Maddoxes and the Tom Glavins of the game who neither one of them threw much more than 90.
Right.
But they could pinch on the corners and paint those corners and get people out without having to throw that 95, 100 mile an hour pitch.
Right. But now everybody throws 100 miles per hour. It's just part of the game. Now this, of course, is barring injury, right? If a pitcher gets hurt, I mean, obviously you make that change.
But I think, honestly, though, guys can throw 100 miles an hour. They could back in the day, but they had to develop another pitch. Right. Look at Nolan Ryan. As much as, he has 7 no-hitters, and everybody knows him for being a flamethrower.
Right.
He had one of the most devastating 12-6 curveballs the game's ever seen.
Disgusting.
Yes. When it was on, you couldn't touch him, and you were worried about the fastball. But guys like Reggie Jackson could hit a ball thrown 105 miles an hour. But you start throwing that hard 12-6 curveball, it's a whole different game. So I want some of these pitchers that are throwers right now to have to develop another pitch to become pitchers again.
Well, yeah, and this rule is going to make it. And again, it brings that chess piece back because if you're all of a sudden bringing stuff up to the plate and you're making changes on batters and you and I are managing against each other, and I know you still have that pitching change in your back pocket, I now have to think, do I bring up the lefty? However, if you've burned it in the first inning and I still have mine, I now know I have an upper hand for the rest of the game.
And the pitcher you've got on the mound better be able, if it's a right-handed pitcher, he better be able to throw to right-handed and left-handed batters.
Correct. You can have your specialist late in the game, but you better still have that pitching change in the middle of an inning. And the big thing is what this saves on is time, right? Because the average pitching change takes 10 minutes. Now, if you change pitchers before the inning starts, you're on a break anyways. It doesn't make a difference. However, during an inning, that's an extra 10 minutes added to this inning that doesn't need to be used. And when you're changing pitchers in the middle of the inning with 1 or 2 outs left, every, probably on average 8 times a game. I think I looked at it, it was 8, 9, 10 times a game last year.
It's just too much.
That's 80 minutes.
And on top of that, and I'm going to speak directly to baseball on this, you have a valuable product. Charge more for the commercials you have, and don't just add more commercials all the time, because those inning breaks have gone from being 2 minutes to sometimes 5 and 6 minutes.
Right.
Charge more for what the time you have, but limit it to 3 minutes.
Well, and you're going to do that with this rule change in place, right? Because there's not going to be as many commercial breaks. You're taking those away.
Correct.
And it makes the game more watchable. It makes the game move so much faster. I mean, I guarantee this change alone would bring the games back down to 2 hours and 45 minutes.
3.5, 3 hours, maybe 3.5 in some cases, but it's got to start coming back the other way. We can't continue to go 6 hours for a game.
Right.
Next rule.
The next rule is the 12th inning. Now, I can't take full credit for this. I heard Mark Greenberg talk about this, but
Mike Greenberg. That's why I said get it to Greeny earlier.
Yeah.
Because this is his idea.
It is, and I stole it, and I made it better. But
okay.
I had a couple more ideas I added to it, but I do think this is a great thing that could be brought into the baseball. Because one thing that made baseball great so many years ago is that it was timeless, right? You never knew how long it could take. But again, we have a baseball game now that's taking 4 hours for 9 innings. The longest game of all time was 24 innings, right? It was Cubs-Phillies.
Cubs-Phillies.
And that game took 5.5 hours.
Can you imagine what that game would take now?
It would still be playing if it started in July.
Yes.
Like, we'd still be watching that one game now.
And one of the things that you and I loved when we lived in Tampa, we became hockey fans.
Yeah.
The Lightning games were fun to go to.
Yes, they were.
We always knew at the end of the game, if it was a tie, what do we have?
You have overtime, and then you have a shootout.
Correct. And baseball can do the same thing with this rule change.
They can, and I'm going to get into more in the rules here in a minute. I have all the rules on this listed out, but this is a time where now you know when the game's going to end, because there's nothing worse than having a baseball game that goes extra innings, especially when you have to work the next day or you have kids with you. You don't know when this game's going to end. This game could end now. It could end 5 innings from now. I mean, Who knows how long this is going to go? This makes it where the 12th inning ends it. You have the 10th and the 11th to try and win the game. And then all of a sudden you have the 12th inning, which is a home run derby. And it's the most home runs when it's all said and done. And you can have one player that comes out, but you get one player and you get one pitcher, and they come out, and it's how many home runs you can hit. Like I said, I'm going to go into rules on that in a minute here where we go full detail on it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now. But I'm going to move on to the next one, which is move up the start time of playoff games, which is something you had mentioned already, which I completely agree with. Playoff games for baseball start way too late.
Yes. I mean, let's face it. When we were living in Tampa, the start time for a World Series game generally was 9 or 9:30 Eastern.
Correct.
It's just way too late, and you've got to value your product more than that. You've got to know people watch the Super Bowl no matter what time it is, and they chose to put it at 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern time. It's done by 9 p.m. Baseball should do the same thing. When I was growing up, they would wheel TVs into our study halls because the World Series games were on in the afternoon.
Right.
There's no reason, and I'm not saying during the week you're going to play them at night, but you can start those games 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Central Time, an hour later on the East Coast, and get it so the kids can watch these games.
I agree. Number one, I'm surprised they had TVs when you were in school. Number two, you're absolutely right. I mean, these games need to start earlier. The World Series happened with the Cubs, and like you said, this game was starting at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it ended at 2 in the morning. That was a Tuesday. Like, I took vacation specifically because the Cubs were in the World Series, but I couldn't have stayed up otherwise. I have work to do, especially during a weekday. You can start these games at 5:30, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And people on the West Coast will still watch. It'll still be a part of it.
And there's still going to be great games, but your audience is going to grow. And more importantly, generations down the road, the game is going to grow because now the kids are involved in it.
Well, and guess what? If my son gets done with school at 3:00, that's average, right?
Sure.
3:00, you're starting this game at 5. He gets a chance to watch it. Even if you're talking, East Coast 6, Central Time 5, West Coast, you're starting at 3. Kids are still getting out of school right at that time, and they're going to rush home to watch their teams play the World Series. It gives them something to watch while they're still awake. You don't have to stay up past what normal bedtime is. And like you said, it brings a generation. This game is for kids, and we're not allowing kids to enjoy it.
We've got to start thinking of the future and thinking of the next set of fans. Once I'm gone, once you're gone, you want baseball to still be watched and growing.
Right. And that goes for Sunday Night Baseball too. You have Mike Trout, the greatest player in the game, and most people haven't even seen him play, even on TV. And again, it's Sunday Night Baseball games. What time do they start? 8:30, 7:30 Central, right? That's way too late. You need to be starting these games earlier in the day. And if people aren't going to watch it that early in the day, then you need to do a better job of making your product more watchable. Exactly. And that's what the rest of these worlds will do.
And I got to be honest with you, when I was a kid, the game of the week was on Saturday afternoons, and everybody watched it. Right. Now, granted, every team's got their own network now. Baseball, every game is being televised. Didn't always used to be that way. However, if we start them a little bit earlier, we're going to get kids interested, and they're going to watch, and they're going to fall in love with the game because it's so easy to fall in love with.
It is.
But let's start walking through everything one by one.
All right, so let me get into here where we're going to talk about, you want to do divisions or 12th inning first?
Let's do the divisions. Let's peel off that Band-Aid because we are going to be National League and American League as they stand now don't exist anymore. Back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, the National League players never saw American League players until they got to the World Series. That doesn't happen anymore with free agency or the All-Star game. But with free agencies, people are changing leagues all the time. So let's rip off the Band-Aid and let's just make these divisions more geographically aligned and more revenue aligned.
Correct. I 100% agree. Again, this is getting rid of the wild card. You don't need it with this. And completely realigning everything and even moving over some of the teams from National to American League, which is fine. Again, DH across both leagues, right? It's fair game all the way across the board. It's the same game for everybody, so it's not going to make much of a difference. So when I line this up, basically what it was is keeping rivalries together, keeping in-state rivalries together, which a lot of teams are not right now. They're in different divisions, so you're going to bring that a part of it. And again, like you said, revenue-wise, big markets with big markets, and it's going to make it more exciting. So one of the first ones I have out there: Giants, Dodgers, Angels. You're having the Angels and the Dodgers together to create an LA market together. And you're having the Giants in there because you're not going to break up the Giants-Dodgers rivalry. That is one of the oldest rivalries in sports.
Correct.
So that's going to stay. Cubs, Sox, Cardinals. Cubs and Cardinals have been a rivalry for a very long time, no matter if you say so or not.
Oh, it has been. I just said one's a hammer, one's a nail.
Yeah,
but you get the crosstown rival in Chicago by bringing the White Sox, where they're going to be playing. I mean, the rivalry between the Sox and the Cardinals will be just as big as the Cubs and the Cardinals.
If not bigger, honestly.
Maybe.
I mean, it's going to get ugly. It's a great rivalry, and you may say, well, Chicago's got more money. Well, the Cardinals are still better. They're going to continue to find a way to win. Sorry, Cubs fans, I'm with you, but you have to admit when you're wrong.
And certain franchises, like the Cardinals, have never had the most money, but they always spend it more wisely. They were smarter than the other teams.
Blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear your Cardinal bias anymore.
That was a shot at the Yankees, who just spend. Cardinals would beat them because they spent smarter than anybody else.
They do. It's a great baseball organization and a great baseball franchise. You have, now this is a fun one that I like a lot. You put Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Washington together. So you have the Pirates, the Phillies, and the Nationals. The Pirates and the Phillies, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia against each other. You don't have that in any other league. It's literally a one-of-a-kind situation, and it's a fight for the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and for those people who go, well, so much for the revenue. Pittsburgh's a small market team. They need to spend more wisely. My point, they've got them. They'll have the revenue. They'll have the money to compete financially with Philadelphia and with Washington.
They will, and Philly's not always the best team. Washington hasn't always been the best team. Pittsburgh needs to figure it out. I mean, they've been a bottom team for so long. They have to figure it out. And listen, if they're going to continue to be in the basement and let the Phillies destroy them, it is what it is. But at this rate, at least you have that competition there. And imagine the Pittsburgh fans now getting fired up because Philadelphia continues to beat them. You think Pittsburgh Pirates fans are going to allow that to happen?
No,
they're going to call for a new owner before they allow that to happen.
Absolutely.
And it's going to force the Pirates to get better. And again, it's the travel isn't too much. The Orioles are coming to the National League along with the Sox. You're putting the Orioles in the National League. You're going to put them with Miami and Atlanta to really have that East Coast side. I'm not putting the Rays with Miami, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I think this is a great division. The Orioles are, again, a bottom team that has to get better. Miami's in that same boat. At some point, you have to make it happen, and Atlanta makes sense in this division.
It does, and we will talk about the Rays and the A's. And at some point, baseball's talked about contraction rather than expansion. I don't think baseball can expand anymore. We're just using this as this is what they have now. This is where it's going to stay.
Correct.
And Miami's just got to figure it out.
Miami's got to figure it out. And it puts Atlanta, again, in a good division. And it puts Baltimore now in a competitive situation where they're not always going to be out of it as long as they start spending money wisely. Again, you have a 1/3 chance. And if you're going to continue to be a bottom team in this division, well, that's on you.
The Braves are just going to continue to own things.
Right. I mean, at some point, you have to figure it out.
Right.
And this puts more pressure on these owners to figure it out faster because you don't have 5 teams up against you anymore, or 4 teams, I should say. You only have 2 people to beat.
And it's going to force you to be buyers instead of sellers when you get to the trade deadline middle of the year.
Exactly. My last National League division, I am bringing the Oakland Athletics into the National League, and I am creating a division of the Arizona Diamondbacks, the San Diego Padres, and the Oakland Athletics. Again, geographically makes sense. I didn't want to break up the LA teams, and so I put Oakland with San Diego and Arizona.
And when the A's finally relocate, and most people seem to think they're going to relocate to Las Vegas.
Right.
I do as well. I think it'll still be a good division.
They're either going, in my opinion, the A's are either going to Las Vegas or Charlotte. If they stay in Las Vegas, you don't need to mix anything up. If they go to Charlotte, obviously you will.
However, I also don't think the Rays are going to stay in Tampa because the political will isn't there to build that new stadium in Tampa. And if they don't do it, as good as an organization as the Rays have, they're going to be moved. And I think there is your Charlotte team that will be moving over there.
It's possible. I mean, that's the reason I didn't put Miami with Tampa Bay, because I don't think the Rays are staying in Florida. So that's why I didn't put them there. But it's a great National League. Again, 1/3 chance. These teams are all in competition with each other. Anybody can win it any single year. And the great thing is, too, you're not seeing the Dodgers and the Giants in the playoffs together every single year.
Correct.
It builds that rivalry more because you have to win to get in. Imagine the Giants-Dodger rivalry now that it's saying, nope, there's no wild card.
One of you's going to get in, one of you's not. You better be good.
Exactly. And it makes that more exciting.
And oh, by the way, the Angels are going to have something to say about that.
They are. They're going to have to figure it out, too. It's a fight for LA and a fight for the Bay Area in general.
Exactly. And now we're going to go to the other league where I can hear people complaining already that the purists are going to be very upset with one team in particular.
I don't care. You know how I feel about purists in baseball. I don't want to hear from you anymore.
Well, you're going to hear from me because I'm there, but I even think this is a good move.
Well, they're at the bottom of my list, so you're going to have to wait. For those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see this. For those of you listening, you're going to have to wait till I come up with it. But I'm going to start with a division that I really like, and I think the fans of these teams will really like, and that is the Colorado Rockies, the Seattle Mariners, and the Kansas City Royals in the American League in a division together. It's a fight for the West. I think it's a great move for all 3 of these teams. and a great way for each one of these teams to have a shot at the playoffs every single year.
It's one of my favorite divisions you came up with.
It's a small market division, and all of these teams are pretty even. And listen, some of these teams don't have bad records, but you got to send somebody.
And by the way, if you're on the East Coast, it used to be where you'd get up and you'd look at the box scores in the newspaper. Well, now with 3 teams in each division, you're wanting to know who's going to be in the playoffs. You're going to be starting to watch these Seattle games that typically start way later than the East Coast.
Correct. And I think it's going to force some of these West Coast games to start earlier.
Which wouldn't be a bad thing.
People are going to be interested. This is an old school division. I also like this division a lot, which is the Toronto Blue Jays, the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Minnesota Twins. There's obviously a Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry already. Toronto so often gets buried in that East Coast debate. This puts them geographically, which makes sense with Milwaukee and the Twins, and I just think it would be a fun rivalry for all the fans.
I do too. And Milwaukee and Minnesota used to have a rivalry when the Brewers were in the American League. Honestly, I think the Brewers are more of an American League team, so putting them back with the Twins and with Toronto makes perfect sense to me.
Thanks to solid division. This is the one where you're keeping the Texas teams together, so you have the Houston Astros, the Texas Rangers, and I put the Tampa Bay Rays in there. I don't think Oakland's moving to Vegas, honestly. I think if anything, Oakland's going to move to San Jose. I do think the Rays are going to move to Vegas, and if that's the case, this division can just stay put. It just shuffles it a little bit.
I think you're wrong about the A's. I don't think they're going to have a team in San Jose. They've tried that before. I think Vegas has proven they're a major league city.
Yep.
I think the A's move to Vegas. If the Rays move to Vegas before then, fine. There may be a couple little adjustments that have to be made to geographically keep things straight, but it'll be early enough in the process that it'll still be able to be done.
Agreed. And neither team has to change their name. The A's fits perfectly with Vegas, and so does the Rays.
The Rays. Yes, exactly.
So it works either way. My next division is a division I think a lot of people are going to like and pay attention to, which is the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, and the Boston Red Sox. Again, you have to win to get in. We're not seeing the Yankees and the Red Sox in the playoffs anymore. You are in a divisional race, and honestly, I think Red Sox and Yankees fans are going to love this.
I do too, because it's going to be a battle to see which of those teams gets into the playoffs every year, and the Mets, with a couple of the changes that they're now making, are going to want to be part of that conversation. I think this may be the most exciting division in baseball.
I think it'll be one of the most competitive for sure. I mean, there's no bottom team here. These are going to be the top of the league teams, and you're going to see a good team with a better record than some of these other teams not make the playoffs.
Then they aren't that good, then, are they?
I'm with you. I think that's awesome. I think it makes the rivalries even better. The last division is the one that you have the problem with, which I am bringing the Cincinnati Reds into the American League. And the reason being is because of in-state rivalries, and I am going to put the Cincinnati Reds with the Cleveland Guardians and the Detroit Tigers because I just think that sounds like a fun division.
It'll be a fun division. I'm telling you, the purists that are going to be out there watching this are going, Cincinnati is the oldest National League team. They used to play the first game of every season. I think it's time to get over it.
I agree.
And I actually think
not the oldest team in the National League. They're the oldest professional team in the National League. So if you're really going to come and give me that stuff, you're really not a purist of baseball anyways, and don't know the history as well as I do, which means I have the right to put them in the American League.
I forced him to learn the history, folks, so that's why you can say that. But I think it'll be a great division because you've got Detroit, you've got Cleveland, and you've got Cincinnati.
Correct.
And again, even though they've been the bottom, last year, Cincinnati would have made the playoffs.
Well, I mean, think about that. I mean, we did the math on this with the leaders in each division, and the Reds make the playoffs in 2021 if this division exists.
And once you get into the playoffs, who knows what's going to happen?
It's anybody's game. And again, with this, you use the same playoff format, right? So take the first teams and everything, right? You're going to take the bottom team. So if this is our top division, right? Giants in first place, Rockies in first place, and down. You will have the Orioles and the Diamondbacks face each other in a one-game playoff. Two division winners. They're the two division winners with the worst record. And you'll have the Yankees and the Reds face each other in a one-game playoff. And then you seed it like you do now.
Which I like the one-game playoffs. I think they're exciting. And again, people are going to go, well, it's baseball. You've got a pitching staff, and you should decide these things over at least 3 to 5 games. Forget that. One game. The most exciting games I can ever remember were the one-game playoffs and we won't use the word, but I'll never forget Bucky effing Dent, because he won that game, and the Red Sox were on the outside looking in a one-game playoff.
It's honestly, it's super exciting. And here's what I have to say for fans that say, well, I don't want the one-game playoff. Well, then your team better to pay attention in the regular season and have a better record and win that division, so you're not in that one-game playoff.
There you go. And if you do have that one-game playoff, you better make sure you have pitchers and not throwers, because with the other rule, you're going to have to win that game with the pitchers.
You get one change. We're not watching a 4-hour game. We're going to get this done with, and then if it does go into extra innings, that's where it comes into the 12th inning. That may be my greatest segue I've ever done, by the way. I'm proud of myself on that one.
It's probably the only segue you've ever done.
Listen.
I'm used to the segue guy because you're just babbling on and on and on. But let's talk 12th inning.
The 12th inning, so this is where it comes to the end, right? So you have the 10th and you have the 11th where it's played like regular baseball, right? Those are your normal overtime rules. 12th inning happens, and all of a sudden it's a home run derby. We're going to end the game here. You get one player you can pick. Has to be on your active roster, right? Doesn't necessarily have to have played in the game. You can have your 26-man specifically there for the home run derbies. He can be your specialist. That's fine. But it's a home run derby. You get your one pitcher, right? Each team chooses one batter and one pitcher, which is in the rules here. Home team's going to bat first. They get the first shot at this one. You get 3 warm-up pitchers for each batter. Now, what I mean is the batter comes up from the home team, right? He gets to watch 3 pitches come in to see what his pitcher's doing. That's it. 3 pitches you get to watch.
Now, are you having I want to get a clarification. Are you going to have like the pitching coach like they do in the All-Star game? Or are you going to actually have one of the regular pitchers being your designated home run inning pitcher?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whoever you want. Just has to be somebody that's in your bullpen, or not in your bullpen, but somebody that's on your team, in the dugout with you or in the bullpen, however you want to have it. I don't really care.
So you can use a coach.
You can use a coach if you want, but you can't change out that coach.
Yeah, he's got to go for the entire 12th inning.
It's you and him for the entire time. It can be the bat boy. I don't care. As long as he's a part of your active roster as a coach or a player, a bat boy, it doesn't really matter. But you get 3 pitches to watch, and then you get 6 straight pitches. And that's all you get. 6 straight pitches. Either hit home runs or you don't. You either swing at them or you don't. It doesn't matter. It is 6 straight pitches, and then the next batter comes up from the away team and gets the same thing. And you know what? I may change this. Actually, I think the home team should bat last. I'm going to update this.
Well, considering that's the way it works for the rest of the game.
I didn't think about that. I was late at night when I wrote this down. But the home team bats last, so ignore the home team bats first part of things. And then they come in, again, get to watch 3 pitches, and then it is 6 straight pitches. And that's all you get. It doesn't matter if you swing or not. That's why it's so important now where you have specialist pitchers that can make these pitches work on a regular basis.
Okay, so you come to the end of those 12 pitches, the home team, which bats last, hits 3 home runs, and the visitor hits 3 home runs. Then what?
Then you go 1 for 1 for 1 until somebody hits a home run and somebody doesn't.
And for those who are going to say, oh, all that changing back and forth, it's not going to be, because the visitor and the home pitcher are going to be standing behind the cage.
Correct.
Because you do have to bring that out there. And they'll just go switch positions. The 2 batters will literally be right up next to home plate or in their batting circle, and they'll just change it out. It'll be very quick, but it will end the game.
It will end the game, and it brings an excitement to baseball. So all of a sudden, rather than sitting there in the 10th inning, not knowing when this game's going to end, and just hoping that somebody wins this game so you can call it a night and go home, all of a sudden now you are hoping in the 9th inning of a tie ball game that it stays tied, because you now want to see the 12th inning.
It's almost going to be, if they win, the home team wins in the 10th inning, fans are going to be a little disappointed because they didn't get to see the home run derby.
You want to see the 12th. You want to see the 12th inning. It doesn't matter how long that one goes because people are going to be on the edge of their seat. All of a sudden, kids are going to be paying closer attention because this makes a difference. Because, like you said, what's the most exciting thing in hockey? It's a shootout, right? Now, this is where you and I disagree on the 12th inning. I think you keep it always, including the playoffs.
I do too. I just don't think you do it in the 7th game of the World Series.
100% do in the 7th game of the World Series. There would be nothing more exciting than a World Series that comes down to the 12th inning, which is a home run derby to win the game.
I see your point on it. I do. I think it would be an exciting ending. However, this is where the purist in me is coming out. If you want to accuse me of that, fine. But I would like to see the 7th inning, because if you do start the games earlier, the 7th game of the World Series, and we make these other changes, shouldn't take 6 hours.
No,
so at the end, then 7th game of the World Series, I would like to see it played out to the end with the regulation players on the field deciding it. They've fought through 162 games. They've fought through the playoffs. Let those players decide the 7th game rather than a home run derby. That's my only point.
The only thing I really think you can't is because you've had them play a certain way at this point. And now all of a sudden you have this rule where you can't change out pitchers every inning, and you're only going to keep so many pitchers on your roster at that point because you won't need all those extra pitchers anymore because you're not going all these extra innings, and you can't switch them out as much as you normally do. So you can't all of a sudden change the game in Game 7 and tell these pitchers they have to do something that they haven't had to do.
I admit I'm going to lose the argument on this, and I'm going to have to be good with it. I look at Wimbledon because I'm a huge tennis fan. You do the tiebreaker until the 5th set, and you play it out. I want to see the 7th game of the World Series. The rare times that happens, normally games end before then, or series ends before then, but I want to see the regular players go and finish the game at that point. That's just me.
It's different in Wimbledon, though, because it's 1 versus 1, right? It's the same players going at it. It's different in baseball because it is a team sport. And what's the most memorable moments in World Series history? They're these walk-off home runs, right? Gary Carter hits a walk-off home run.
Joe Carter.
Why do I keep saying Gary Carter?
I don't know.
The last time we did this too. Joe Carter hits a walk-off home run.
I love Gary Carter. He was a great catcher, but Joe Carter's the one that hit.
Joe Carter hit the walk-off home run
off of Mitch Williams.
Wild thing.
Yeah.
Kirk Gibson hits the home run versus the A's.
The only time in history a World Series was won in Game 1.
Yeah, they went on to sweep, and it was done. But again, those are the most memorable times in baseball, and you're going to bring that into the playoffs. Again, it's more exciting, and again, you're also ending the game.
That's the best end. That's the best argument for this, is because if you do have it in the 7th game of the World Series, everybody's going to stay up to see that final home run derby if it happens.
Correct. You're bringing people into this game. You're absolutely bringing people back to baseball. It brings an excitement that hasn't been there. You don't need this miracle home run race that ended up being tainted to bring it back. You're going to bring people back to actually watch the game, which means you're going to have household names. You may have a guy who just specifically does the 12th inning become a household name because of how many home runs he hits. And I think there's nothing better for baseball than that.
Well, look at Schwarber. He's a case in point. Kyle Schwarber, a great home run hitter.
Right.
He may be saved for that one special task.
Imagine if you have Edgar Martinez later in his career. You may get another 3 years out of Edgar Martinez because all of a sudden he's just there to do one thing, and that's to hit home runs in the 12th inning. He plays maybe a few times a year, but Edgar Martinez going into that's going to be able to hit some home runs.
So would Ken Griffey Jr.
Right.
The biggest thing about this I really like is just the fact that it's making baseball exciting again.
It is.
This is not changing the game fundamentally. It's still baseball as I grew up knowing it. And honestly, I would have loved to have seen that home run derby, even when games were 2.5 hours.
It would have been amazing. And the thing is, too, when it comes to like records and stuff like that, right, because baseball purists like yourself are going to talk about that, obviously 12th inning home runs don't count
they
towards
don't count.
records.
Right.
Like,
so
Hank conversation.
Hank Aaron still holds the record with
Right.
755, and whoever is hitting all the home runs in the 12th inning, it will be a new stat that people will keep track of.
It will 100% be a new stat that doesn't count towards the actual regular season home runs. It's its own separate thing. What do baseball people love more than anything is more stats that we get to pay attention to. So it gives you another one. Not that I don't like it or anything.
Well, I would think you don't, considering the sarcasm you just put in the voice. Not that everybody likes it. Stop.
I hate analytics in baseball. I absolutely hate it. I just want to watch the game.
I do too, and I hate money. I hate the stats. I want to see guys like Don Zimmer who manage from their gut come back into the game. But that's
players be players.
That's another conversation.
That's where, honestly, the third rule I have on here, only one pitching change during an inning per game, takes out that. You have to have pitchers now. You have to have baseball players. You can't just have a guy come in and throw 100 miles per hour to a lefty because he's a lefty. That's gone. These kids have to learn how to pitch.
And that's what has to happen to save baseball long term, because their arms aren't going to hold out. I mean, I look at a guy like Warren Spahn, and they interviewed him way back in the day. How did you pitch so many? He goes, well, I started when I was a little kid, and we'd throw all day, and we built up the muscle. That's what these kids have to do. And we'll talk about this later on, but, one of the worst things that's happened to kids is everything has to be organized. No, it doesn't. Let the kids go and make up their own rules for the game, but fall in love with it because they're making up their own rules.
Correct. This the integrity. This changes the game, but like you said, not fundamentally. These are all changes for the better. These are all better for the integrity of the game, and it brings people in to pay closer attention. Forget the purism of baseball. You're not changing the rules. We've had rule changes in the past, 2 major ones in history, right? We went from having one ball used for the entire game to switching out that ball on a regular basis, and sometimes every pitch, right? We even lowered the mounds.
1968 because of Bob Gibson.
Right. And that was a huge change in baseball. That changed fundamentally how the game worked in a lot of ways. This is just another one of those changes because this is better for the game. This makes the game more exciting, especially the divisions. You get rid of the wild card because I'm sorry, the wild card in baseball is dumb. I can't stand it. You have to win to get in, and it just makes it more exciting for fans.
And the last thing I want to see is that circus they were talking about where the team with the best record is going to pick who they play.
Rob Manfred needs to quit coming up with ideas, is what needs to happen. Rob Manfred, I'm sorry, has not been a good commissioner for baseball at all.
No, he's been awful.
And if he wants to make a move that's going to make him the best commissioner to ever be remembered, he takes these rules, he puts them in place, and changes baseball for the better for all eternity. All of a sudden, 162 games doesn't feel like 162 games anymore because you are paying closer attention.
This modernizes the game in ways that doesn't change the game. It just makes it more exciting, and it puts it on the sports landscape where it's competing against football, because why is football so popular? Because it's exciting. It's fast-paced.
Correct.
Well, baseball can still be baseball, but it gets real fast-paced at the end when you're going to end the game with a 12th inning home run derby.
Right. People turn off when there's too many pitching changes because it's been a half an hour and we're still in the bottom of the 3rd inning. No one's going to sit there and watch that. You're now telling somebody they have to watch another 2 hours of a game. It's not going to happen. This way, with these types of changes, you're literally cutting at least 80 minutes off of these games. It's much faster. And you know what? If your starter's imploding, we're back to old school baseball. You have to figure it out.
Right. And it may just be where the manager, the pitcher is looking into the dugout going, I don't have it. And the manager's just looking at him going, it's on you. Go figure it out.
Right. Sucks to suck. It's going to make the games a lot more exciting.
I think these changes are easy to implement. They're good for the game, and they should be implemented.
They're great for the game.
And so we need everybody to share this video, to get it to Major League Baseball, and to have these changes implemented. It's good for, if you're the players union right now, okay, you're going to have the DH across both leagues, but you're even getting another player in this because now you're going to have the home run specialist at the end of the game. May not be that DH.
And it's going to make free agency more exciting now, too. all of a sudden there's going to be more competition in free agency, especially early on, because you are one of 3 teams in a division that could win at any time. So you're gonna all of a sudden go after players that normally you wouldn't go after, because you can change season after season if you're in the playoffs or not.
Well, and you look at football. It's about 6 teams every year
Correct.
that weren't in the playoff the year before and are now. Same thing's going to happen in baseball all of a sudden, and it's a more exciting game. The thing I hate the worst is if you're a fan of Pittsburgh, by May you're out of it. So why are people going to a Pirate game at that point?
Though they're not.
No, they're
stadiums. Not. I mean, you have one of the most beautiful stadiums in baseball, and nobody's going to watch the games because your team's terrible.
Well,
this is going to force you again, especially if you're going up against the Phillies.
You're going to have to get it together and be smart with your money, and you've got a chance to be in the playoffs every single year. So I think these changes are very wise. They're easy to implement, and it's going to make baseball a better game, and it's going to secure my place in the Hall of Fame for coming up with this as a contributor.
Listen.
You might be there too.
Listen. My rules. I'm kidding. They're both our rules. We both.
I was gonna say, wow.
But
okay,
they are
great Kyle rules.
This does make baseball better. It makes it more enjoyable. It makes it more watchable. But comment below if you don't think the Cincinnati Reds belong in the American League. Tell me in the comments below, and I'll tell you you're wrong.
I want to hear somebody try to poke holes in this though, and tell us why these changes to a change aren't really, really good for baseball.
I would love it too, because I don't think you can. I think all of these changes make sense for baseball. I think all these changes make the sport better. This is airtight. You and I have been trying to poke holes in this. This is airtight. So if you find holes in this, please let us know. Besides, National League shouldn't have the DH. Besides that, right? Take that off the table. Besides purist arguments, give me actual holes on why this isn't good for baseball. Please comment below. And while you're down there, do this right here, which is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we drop a new episode, so you get to enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making it. Any last words before we head out?
Very important to share this, and we'll have new bobbleheads for the next episode.
He always does. I don't know where you're getting these things from, but there always happens to be new bobbleheads showing up whenever we record.
Like the baseball cards, I don't even know how many I've got.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us and watching this show. Can't thank you enough for enjoying this with us. This has been Sports Talk with Dad.
Bye, everybody.